The following story is true and has been extensively researched based on available eyewitness testimony and official communication from the law enforcement agencies involved. The goal of these videos is to shine a light on individuals and stories long forgotten, the famous and infamous that make up our shared histories.
Each year in the United States, the state's attorneys general in all 50 states submit an annual opinion. They talk about the prevalence of crime in their state. They talk about patterns. And one such pattern that alarmed a great number of attorneys general in 1964 was that of bank robbery. An alarming rise in this particular crime. And our story today deals just with that. William Hutton Coble was born May the 29th of 1923 to John and Olive Coble in Giles County, Tennessee. William would join the Navy in World War II, but by 1964 would be on the FBI's 10 Most Wanted, the 199th person to be placed on this list. What had 20 years done to so change a life? Here at the Coble plot in Maplewood Cemetery in Pulaski, Tennessee, we see the fact that William Hutton would lose his parents at a relatively early age. His father passing away at the age of 54 in 1945, his mother Olive passing away in 1941, also in her early 50s. When John Coble would die in 1945, spending his last year on earth as a prison guard in Nashville, Tennessee, he would leave behind 4 sons, including William Hutton, who all served in a different branch of the armed services. William Hutton Coble, unfortunately, would be dishonorably discharged from the United States Navy. But even before that period, in his early 20s, it was seen that William is perhaps going down a different path in life. Always known for getting involved in petty crimes. In fact, a family member of mine had a teacher who had been a classmate of William Hutton Coble's and had talked about a situation where he had broken into a local store when he was younger using one of the knives from the kitchen set of his mother. And it was because he had left that knife behind, they were able to track down exactly who had done it. Following William Hutton Coble's dismissal from the Navy for bad conduct, from the years 1945 through 1963, he would go on to commit a staggering amount of crime, from forgery to interstate transportation of a stolen auto, larceny, housebreaking, larceny from a person, just to name a few. He would also use various aliases in the pursuit of this crime, such as John B. Bryant, William H. Cable, Burtis B. Covington, William Guy Covington, and several more, but we won't get into that right now. By the early 1960s, William Coble knew that if he was going to sustain himself in this criminal lifestyle, that he was going to have to up the stakes. And up the stakes he did when on June the 20th of 1962, he would rob a bank in the small town of Frank Ewing, Tennessee. Robbing a teller at gunpoint, he would get away with $4,383. And in today's money, that's roughly $43,000. With the potential take increasing based on the level of crime, also too were the stakes involved. Robbing a bank, a federal crime, would put you under the microscope of a great many police organizations across the United States. Based on a tip from a known female associate on September the 12th of 1962 in Chattanooga, Tennessee, William Hutton Coble was arrested from the bank robbery in Frank Ewing. Much like the myriad of crimes committed before it, he would now be going back to jail. In fact, William Hutton Coble had spent the majority of his adult life behind bars, spending time at the federal and local levels in Tennessee, Florida, Georgia, and Alabama. William Coble would sit in a Nashville municipal jail for over a year awaiting sentencing for the bank robbery in Frank Ewing. But one thing he was used to was life in prison. And William Coble was a man who could get things. Roughly 10 days out from his trial for the bank robbery, William Hutton Coble, on the early morning of September the 2nd, along with 3 other prisoners, decided they were going to make a break for it. Using smuggled hacksaw blades, they would saw through the window bars of their cell. And using a rope ladder that had been fashioned from prison mattresses, they would lower themselves down 3 flights to freedom. Having been on the run for less than a month and in desperate need of funds, on September the 27th, William Hutton Coble and an accomplice would rob the Ardmore, Tennessee First National Bank. This time, it would be quite the haul, nearly $350,000 in today's money. It is said that William and his accomplice had terrorized the tellers, actually forcing them for a brief period of time into the restroom while they made their getaway. Having had enough of the Tennessee winter and recently flushed with cash after another bank robbery, William Hutton Coble finds himself in Fort Pierce, Florida. What's a guy to do but sit back and relax and bask in his accomplishments? Well, for a short time. Remaining at large until January the 9th of 1964, Florida police and the FBI would finally corner William Hutton Coble and a female companion in a Fort Pierce, Florida hotel room. He would be found with a little over $5,300 in cash and a German Derringer as well. And back in police custody again, a familiar place awaited. On May the 15th of 1964, 41-year-old William Hutton Coble would find himself back in a federal courtroom, this time to answer for charges on the Ardmore, Tennessee bank robbery. This time he would be handed in a 17-year prison sentence to be served concurrently with the 15 years he was already serving for the Frank Ewing robbery. As William Hutton Coble stood there listening to the judge's verdict, one thing he could say for himself is he was dressed to the nines. In fact, that was an important part of William Hutton Coble's personality, was that he was always well dressed. He was quite the ladies' man. And this would actually play an important role in what happened next. May 15th of 1964, William Hutton Coble finds himself sitting in a jail cell in Nashville, Tennessee. This won't be his permanent home, as he's awaiting transfer to the federal prison in Atlanta. He's been caught. Multiple bank robberies are going to have William Coble behind bars for quite some time. Federal marshals had placed him here because they would come back later in the day to take William along with other federal inmates to the prison in Atlanta. But a stroke of luck for William, they had neglected to do something extremely important. They had neglected to lock his jail cell. And with William Coble being described by the police and FBI as a professional escape artist, that was about the biggest blunder they could have possibly made. With an open cell door and still dressed in his smart suit from court, William Coble had an idea. With seemingly nothing to lose, Coble sauntered down the jail corridor until he came face to face with inmate Jack Gordon. He asked Gordon for the use of his prison blanket. Gordon, assuming that Coble was a detective by the suit he was wearing, complied. The next part of our story will be told by a very famous Nashvilleian, Sheriff Fate Thomas, although during this tenure in 1964, he was Chief Deputy Fate Thomas.
Well, what we have here is a situation where a known escape artist was put in a cell that wasn't locked. The marshals simply put that Coble fella right where he wanted to be. He was a well-dressed person as well, and that also aided his escape. The other inmates just assumed he was another detective. He walked out of his cell, borrowed a blanket from an inmate to muffle the sound, and then broke out a window, From there, he was outside and gone. Inmate Jack Gordon said he yelled for a guard for more than 20 minutes, but it was more than 6 hours before we knew anything. The marshals came back and said, "Where's our boy Coble?" We questioned several people over this whole thing.
The Nashville Police Department had egg on its face, and William Hutton Coble was now elevated to one of the most infamous bank robbers in the United States. With his admission to the FBI's 10 Most Wanted list for 1964, his propensity for escape, and his history of being armed when he would do robberies across the nation, the call would go out to find William Coble. In July of 1964, the FBI would issue a federal warrant for the arrest of William Hutton Coble. Articles across the country, similar to the one you see here that was put out in Missouri, detailed the harrowing case of Coble's robberies, his escape attempts, and his successful escapes. William Hutton Coble, Caucasian, 5'10" or 11, brown eyes, a history of violence, but very soft-spoken and well-dressed, often in the company of a woman saying that she's his wife, often in the company of prostitutes, scarring across the leg from a vaccination scar, across his arms, hands, neck, back of the head. He's been seen as a machinist, a waiter, a gas station attendant, and he'll attempt to blend in. On March the 1st of 1965, after more than 6 months on the FBI's Most Wanted list, William Coble would rob another bank, this time in Charlotte, North Carolina. In a shopping center, he would use a .38 revolver to smash glass in a shopping center bank. After holding up the teller, he would make a run with more than $8,000 in cash. Holding on to the loot, however, would be easier said than done. Moving up into major metropolitan banks versus the small city banks that had been more William Coble's forte would prove to be a whole different situation altogether. The response time was quite a bit quicker, and after getting into a shootout with patrolman J.G. Bruce, he would drop the loot as he made his escape. Armed and dangerous, William Coble would make his way from the Charlotte bank into a residential neighborhood where he was unsuccessful in trying to break into various homes. He would then come face to face with a station wagon driven by 37-year-old Eleanor Vosburgh. Eleanor, a mother of 3, housewife, fashion model for Parks Belk, tells the story in her own words.
Our twin daughters, Julie and Marty, were in the 1st grade. I had been to school to pick them up at Cotswold School along with some of the neighbors' children. I was parked in my car at the red light, and our pediatrician and his wife was right in front of me in their convertible. They didn't turn when the light turned green, so I stuck my head out of the window and said, "The light's green, go ahead." They both pointed to this man coming over to my car, and they said, "The bank's been robbed, hurry up, get away from here." But before I knew it, that man were right there at my car, so I left in a hurry and went around the corner, and lo and behold, there were my neighbors standing in the yard. There were about 5 women standing in the yard just talking, waiting for their children to get home from school. So I rolled down the window and I said, "You need to get in the house or get in my car. The bank's been robbed and you need to get away from here." Well, by then he was right beside my car, so I said to the children, "Roll up your windows and lock your doors. We're getting out of here." But before I could even move, he had shot me.
In fact, in coming to Miss Vosburgh's car, Coble had shot twice, one bullet going through her left leg, the other through her right. To say Eleanor Vosburgh was anything but heroic would be an understatement.
So I got out of that car and I said to him, "You've got to let me have the children." He said, "Hurry up." I opened the back door and of course they just started running down the road.
Whatever caused William Coble to make the many bad decisions he did in his life, we can take comfort that he made the right decision here in letting Miss Vosburgh and her children go. He would speed away, but it would end up going down an alley where there was no way to get out. After attempting another shootout in which a ricochet hit a 7-year-old boy who would survive, William Coble was done for and was taken into custody by Charlotte police.
Believe it or not, a real good friend of mine was right there. He said, "What are you doing here?" I said, "I just came to get the children." He said, "You'd better get some help." I said, "Take these children and me around the corner to our doctor's office." I ended up in the hospital for at least a week. Case Gary, a newspaper man in Charlotte, wrote about my story, and every day there would be something different in the newspaper about it.
After a brief stretch of freedom and an inevitable return to crime, William Hutton Coble would return to the place that he had spent the majority of his adult life, prison. First, he would be arraigned by Magistrate Winfred Irvin in Asheville, North Carolina, and who I might add passed away just last year at the ripe old age of 95 after a lifetime of serving the citizens of North Carolina. William Coble would still be on the mind of one individual, a very special lady, and also a very special person to the people of North Carolina.
After I got out of the hospital, my minister and I went to the jail to see the bank robber. He was only 41 years of age at that time. I told him I had forgiven him. I took him a Bible. The FBI said I could not correspond with him because he might try to get something from us when he got out of prison.
And unfortunately, although no doubt touched by that sentiment, I'm sure, William Coble would not be getting out of prison. Not from serving his time, which now included an additional 25 years because of 2 robberies in Charlotte, nor by doing what he did very well, escaping from prison. No, just 2.5 years later, in 1967, William Hutton Coble would die of a heart attack, only in his mid-40s. He would be buried in Maplewood Cemetery in Pulaski, Tennessee. And today we tell his story not to glorify what he did, but to shine a light on forgotten true crime. Thank you for listening to this story. I would love to see your comments.
Thank you for watching. Please subscribe if you haven't already, and comment below your thoughts and ideas for future content.